Yes.
Alright, so the last thing that we're going to be looking at today is superannuation, which is technically a form of investment. It's just forced savings. So superannuation is compulsory. You have to pay money into a superannuation account to save up essentially for your future. So it's money that is set aside for when you decide to retire. And so all of that money is pretty much accumulating for a really long period of time, and it's something that, you have to pay. It has to go into that account. Depending on your job will depend on whether your employer will pay it on top of your salary or as a part of your salary. But it is your employer essentially giving that money to a forced savings plan. So we're just going to write out a little bit of information about superannuation, and then we're going to get into some examples of how we calculate it and how it's used. So the key first thing is it's a forced savings plan for use once you are retired. So you don't access it at all until you decide to retire. In Australia, your employer has to pay 9.5% of your salary into a superannuation account. So I get no money. Awesome. So like I was saying, it's for use once you retire. So you can't actually access your superannuation fund until you are retired. Now, different people decide to retire at different ages. In Australia, the retirement age is 65. So you have to be 65. You can retire before that and access your savings from your superannuation, but usually around 65 is when you will go into retirement. So when we're doing these calculations, remember we're thinking about limitations and assumptions that we're making. And those are things that you are going to have to be able to identify. So there are a few when we're looking at superannuation calculations. Okay, the first one is that when we look at superannuation calculations, we're not accounting for any pay rises or pay decreases. So we're assuming that the same amount is getting paid into that account for the entire time. Now, reality is you're probably going to have pay rises as you spend more time in a job. You may take a pay cut if you move jobs. So we're saying that the amount going in is staying constant, but in reality it's likely to change. Another thing that we're not taking into account is the tax that you have to pay on your super, but also any inflation that occurs over that time. So we're not looking at the inflation on the investment at all. And the last thing is we're not taking into account the fact that interest rates are likely to change. You know, you're putting money into your super for about 40 years. To expect that your interest rate is going to stay the same for 40 years is probably a little bit unreasonable. been doing over all of these different types of calculations. It's all about identifying what we are trying to find and looking at which parts of our question go into the functions in our calculator as well. One of the first things we need to be able to do before we even go into using our calculator is calculating this. The percentage of your wage, actually what that amount is that is being paid into your super by your employer. So we need to be able to calculate our employer's contributions. So it's nice and easy to calculate your employer's contributions. We can follow this kind of rule as we're doing it. It's 9.5% or 0.095. Remember, when we're working with percentages and other numbers, they have to be translated into that decimal. We multiply it by our salary, so that's going to give us 9.5% of our salary. And then we divide it by the number of periods or the number of payments within that year. So that's like our monthly, quarterly, half yearly. That number comes in here. So a pretty easy process to follow. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an example now where we first calculate our employer contributions and then use our calculators to find out how much is going to be in a superannuation account after a certain amount of time. Okay, so a two-part question here. We've got, first of all, calculating our employer contributions, and then using that information, we want to know how much this person is going to have in their account after a number of years when they decide to retire. So let's have a look at our situation. Dylan is 20 years old, he's starting full-time work and will earn $52,000 per year. Dylan's employer will make quarterly contributions to his superannuation. How much will the employer contribute? So that's following this rule, working out how much the employer is actually going to be putting in each of those payment periods. So we know that the employer is looking at putting it in quarterly, so we want to know how much is actually going to go in each payment. So we've got our 0.095, around 9.5%, multiplied by the salary. So his salary is $52,000. And because it's quarterly, we want to split that 9.5% up over 4 payments across the year. So, anyone got their calculator there? Good. So, the employer is going to be putting in $1,235 every quarter. So, over the year, he's going to make 4 of these payments. Alright, now we're looking at how much he's going to have when he retires. Remember, whenever we want to find out how much we're going to have after a certain amount of time on an investment, we're going to our compound interest mode. So we're going to be looking at our functions. That we've been working with. So we've got our N, our I, PV, PMT, FV, PY and CY. So let's go through and have a look at what we know. So Dylan's super fund returns 5% per annum. So we know our interest rate, that's going to go in for our I. It's being compounded quarterly, so we know PY and CY are both going to go in as 4, matching up that time period with the number of payments over that year. We also know that whatever our period type also is a part of our N, so we know there's going to be a 4 in there as well. So we want to find how much. We want to know how much is in there. So which function might I be looking for? FV, looking at how much in the future value. So FV is what I'm looking for. Does he start with anything?
$0.
Good, he's starting with nothing. We've got to wait for the employer to start making those quarterly contributions. Where do you think that is going to go?
That's going to go PMT.
Good, the employer contributions always go as PMT. Because the money is being put away, it's not being given straight to that person. Again, it is a negative. So, we're looking for how much money he's got after he retires at age 60. So we know at age 20, he's starting to make those contributions. He's making them all the way up to age 60. So we're looking at 40 years worth of contributions. Make sure that you do make that connection between where you're starting and where you're ending up. We're not putting those contributions in for 60 years. They're not starting when he's born. They're starting at age 20. So make sure you make that distinction. Okay, so our future value. That's it. Do you want to read it out for me, Evan?
62244.
Any cents?
36.
Okay. So, after 40 years of contributions, Dylan is going to have $622,244.46.
That's going to last. Dude, that's going to last.
Doing it right.
Remember that is not taking into account all of these things here. Not taking into account any pay rises or decreases. At age 20, you are likely to have some pay rises before your pay kind of plateaus out. We're not taking into account any tax or inflation, and we've assumed the interest rate remains 5% over the 40 years. William had a question.
Do you get taxed on that?
You do, but it is less than normal. Yeah, because it's the government initiative to set up for your savings. So essentially what they're trying to do is get people to be self-reliant instead of paying out a pension. So what they're hoping is that, by the time you guys retire, you'll have enough money to live without them having to pay you as well to live. So a lot of people now are on the pensions because super didn't exist a number of years ago. So it's taxed way less than an investment because they want you to be self-reliant. But really good question. Alright, so that is the first thing we're going to do with super. Put it in and be able to save up so that when we retire, we are ready to go. We don't have to worry about not having an income. We've got something to supplement our living. We're not going to be out on the street when we retire. We've actually got some money to be able to live. The other thing we need to be able to do with superannuation is withdraw it. Once you have reached your retirement, you want to start accessing your money. Most people are not going to withdraw it in a lump sum. Doesn't make sense to pull out all your money at once and spend it all. It needs to last for a number of years. So what happens once you... Guys, you need to stop talking. There's going to be a lot of background noise. Once you've reached retirement and you've saved your amount in your super fund, what actually happens is it gets translated over into a different account. So it gets put into like a savings account, an annuity, and it's kind of accessed as your own personal pension. So that's what happens. It doesn't stay in your super account the whole time. It actually gets pushed over into a different account where you can start to withdraw it. Most people will start withdrawing it like a weekly, fortnightly, monthly wage. So they just keep pulling it out like you normally would when you get paid. So instead of pulling it all out and going, oh yes, I've got so much money to spend at once, it's rationed out so that you can make sure that you can live on it, until you're done. until your day is run out.
What happens if you get your super and then start working?
I don't actually know. You can start accessing your super when you partially retire. So you can start accessing it if you go from full-time to part-time. I think there's a little bit opposite because there's the self-managed super funds, which is different to government super funds. So government super funds are like self-managed super funds. There's like an age cap, so you don't start accessing it since 55, whereas for most people they wouldn't have access to it like that. Alright, so let's look at our withdrawing super. You want to be able to access your money, you don't want to leave it locked away. You want it to come out like a wage, so you know that it's coming every week, every fortnight, every month, so you can continue to live off it rather than spending it all at once. Alright? So it's transferred from your super fund into a separate account where you take it out as a pension. Alright, so our key is that it is coming out regularly. It's not one big lump sum that comes out to pay for the rest of your life. It's coming out regularly like you would normally be paid when you're working, so that you can budget, you can live off of that money until you don't need to anymore. The key thing that we're looking at with withdrawals is that this time the money is not being put somewhere else. The money is actually coming to you to spend. So that means PMT is positive. You're not building into the account, you're actually taking it out so you can access it and you can spend it. And so instead of it being put into a place for you to use in the future, it's being used now. Okay, so let's have a look at one more example this morning. And then I'll let you have a go at some practice. You do? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Anytime you are getting money, you're always going to get taxed. So we're not taking into account that. It is a lot less when you're moving into your super funds. So some people will put extra money into their super so that it's not taxed. So yeah, part of your assignment is looking at making an extra contribution so actually less of your income tax rate. There's actually make personal contributions to your own super fund for a certain amount of time, and then if you're a first home buyer, you can then withdraw as much as you want. So you can actually get all of that money not taxed at your income rate, but taxed at your super fund. I think it's set up to. Alright guys, let's have a look at our example.
Oh, come on, you serious why?
For 65, money. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, no. It's on a holiday.
Dude, that's a lot of feedback.
Dude, that's what good
17 million V-Bucks. Not even 7
In big.
There goes your super. It's nice. Let's go to Mac.
I make 60.
Alright, let's look at our last example for today. Okay, Maddie has just retired at age 65. She has $900,000 in her super fund. She rolls this over into a pension fund. So she's now saying, now I'm retired, I want to start accessing my money. Her pension fund returns 4% per annum, compounding monthly. The first thing we want to find is if she wants to withdraw $5,400 every month, how long she's going to be able to withdraw that money, how long it's actually going to last her. Again, we're in our compound interest mode. So whenever we're looking at finding any value where we've got a starting amount, we're taking money out, we've got our interest rate, we're all in our compound interest mode. Alright, so let's go through and put in our information. So we know that she's got $900,000. That is the amount that she's starting with in her account. So that is our PV value. She's starting with that amount in her account. Her account is giving her 4% interest, so in our I, we've got 4. Returned monthly, so we've got 12 in PY and in CY. We know that she wants to withdraw 5,400. So PMT, remember, because she's taking that money, can access it, can spend it, it's now a positive. And if she starts here, Cooper, what's she going to end up with? $0. So the future value of her account will be 0. She's going to have nothing in there. We want to be able to remove it all. We're looking for N. Remember, because we've specified that we're looking monthly, N is going to be given to you in number of months. Alright, so let's put that in. Remember, we're going to need to round up to the closest next period because it's not taking just one, it's taking a little bit extra. So, in there we should have
20 years.
243.7. So, because we've got 243.7 months, what this 0.7 on the end is saying is she's actually going to be able to pull out more than 243 months worth. There's just not going to be 5,400 to pull out in the last payment. But we have to round it up because it's taking more than this amount. So N always gets rounded up because it's taking more than that period. So because she's got 243 months and then an extra 0.7, it means there's enough money to get her through part of the next month. But you can't just take it out part way. It's got to be counted as a whole period. So, if I wanted to turn this into years, what would I do? Divide it by 12. So it's about 20 years and 4 months that her money is going to last.
That's pretty good. Should be 85.
Yeah, so it should be 85 and 4 months when she's taking out that money. Let's jump over here. She actually wants it to last until she's 90. So it needs to last almost another 5 years. So instead of pulling out 5,400, we need to know what she can pull out so that it's going to last that extra 5 years. So again, we're using our functions in compound interest. Alright, so N, we know that we want it to last until she's 90. Currently, she is 65. How many years does it need to last? 25 years. Taking it out monthly, so don't forget that times 12 on the end. Has the interest rate changed?
No.
Has the amount that she's starting with changed?
No.
Do we still end up with the account at $0 at the end?
Yes.
We're still compounding monthly, still taking it out monthly. We're looking for our PMT. So we're looking for the payment that can be withdrawn to make it last an extra 5 years.
47.50.
Thank you.
0.53.
Okay, so taking a little bit of a hit there. $4,750.53 can be withdrawn every month if she wants it to last that extra time until she's 90. Now, something that you might often be asked to consider is whether this amount withdrawn will match her current standard of living. And that's when we start to tie in our inflation. So we're just going to quickly look at, does the amount that's being withdrawn match the current standard of living? If not, it means they might have to make some cutbacks. You know, they might not be able to go to the movies or go to different sporting events. They might not be able to buy, you know, the really expensive organic food. They might have to make a little bit of a cut on their expenses. At the moment you do. So at the moment, people over the age of 65 are paid a pension. But now that superannuation is compulsory, it never was compulsory. I don't even think it's established. Now that it is, I think they're going to start making people start buying. So I think they're going to start phasing out the pension. So they're already cutting it back. Yeah, rent.
You are under arrest.
It's not, and if you're talking to any person on the commission, currently it's not a lot of money at all. A lot of today's tonight have been done with stories of someone who's struggling, but they don't actually have enough money to live at all. Very sad. Just got to make sure you save for it. Our grandparents, they save, they get the pension, but they also sold their house and moved to a leasing house. So they were like living off of the money from their house for so long because they owned it, they lived there almost their entire lives. The price was skyrocketed from the time they bought it to the time they sold it. They now live there. Once they get to that point. So part of our assignment is planning for how long we want it to last. Because if you say plan to 85, we need to be 90. With that extra money, yes. Can we open one of the windows over here, please? Alright, so just to finish off, we're going to look at maintaining the standard of living. So, the amount that you withdraw when you retire, people want to know that over the amount of time that it's been saved in the super fund, considering inflation, whether or not they will be able to live at the same standard that they currently are. So, could be an example like this. Yeah, you have to make some budget cuts.
Or just splash it all out.
Okay, let's just quickly finish off with this one. Just same tax. Yeah, it's too much otherwise. Consider. All right, so Maddie currently lives on $3,750 per month. When she retires at age 65, will she be able to maintain the same standard of living? So what we know is that if she wants to be able to have her superannuation last until she's 90, she can only withdraw $4,750.53. If she is currently 20, because it says Maddie.
Yeah, this is in.
Are you
serious?
It's 2018.
This is 25 years in time.
Haven't you got the kids on your ones?
So what we want to know is currently she's 20, we want to know whether she will maintain the same standard of living. Inflation averages 1.3%. Okay, so if we're talking about inflation, we've got to have our indexed value. Remember, we have our inflation rate added to 100% and written as a decimal. So it's going to be 1.013 is our inflation index value. Currently, she is 20 and she retires at 65. So we've got 45 years of inflation. So to a power of 45. And we want to work out whether or not this amount that she's currently living on is going to be able to be maintained with the amount she's withdrawing. So we're going to multiply our 3,750.
Why did you do that? Don't you see that that's a smaller number than that one and it works?
No, because inflation.
Because of the inflation rate. It will make this increase over 45 years. So can someone...
Cost of living increase.
Can someone chuck it into their calculator for me?
No.
Evan's done.
Six, seven,
Point? Oh, so it's 8 something.
No, it's triple eight.
Okay, so it'll be 0.8. Alright, so there you go. There's a really good example. She's currently living on $3,750. After 45 years of increases in the economy, it's now worth $6,705.89 when she retires. So if she's taking out $4,750, is her standard of living going to be maintained?
No.
She can't. She's going to have to make some cuts to be able to live off of what she's able to withdraw. It's a little harsh.
She budgeted it. She retired. She budgeted it.
Alright. Listening. This is really important. This is what your assignment is based on. So you need to understand how superannuation calculations work when you're building into your super fund, but also when you start to withdraw, and whether or not the amount you can withdraw is maintaining your standard of living. And if not, you might need to make some adjustments in there. You might want to save some more over your life. You might want to start taking out less at the start so there's more left towards the end or something like that. There are some strategies that you can employ to make this a bit of a better situation for yourself. Alright, I'm going to put the exercises up on the board. You can go have a break.
Bye.
Bye.